Yeah, so so if you think about an enterprise data warehouse, if we use that word, and I actually want to get to the definition of a warehouse because a lot of people don't even understand what the definition of warehouse is, and which is why data warehousing quote got a bad name. But um, the thing about good engineering practices in data, right, in governance and things like that, is that you should be versioning. So in Data Vault, we version everything, our scripts, our models, our business rules, anything and everything that touches the data we version. And people go, well, why? Why would you do that? Well, if you're audited against a report that was written 3 years ago, and you've changed the business rules over the year, and you've even changed the model over the years, and you've changed the views, and you've changed the load processes because the business rules, if you're working with a conformed dimension, business rules have changed over the year, right? How do you, for an auditor, go back out of that data and reproduce what you did 3 years ago? You can't, right? So when we talk about auditability, one of the things with Data Vault is when certain things change, and they change at a source system that requires a modification in the model, we take one of two approaches. We either create a new object for it so that we preserve what was done in the past, and we begin, and this has to do with changes in grain, for example, right? Which is a killer if you're in a star schema. Change the grain and everything falls apart. Or people join tables that they thought were supposed to be joined together on a set of keys, and then they wonder why they get these incredible Cartesians and their numbers are incorrect, right? So we see all this happening. What we say in Data Vault is when we look at a relationship, for example, between business keys, which really defines the granularity of the data underneath. When we look at that type of thing and we see that there's a grain change, we don't say, well, let's modify that link structure and let's just remove this key or add these extra keys and then we'll try to refactor everything. We don't do that. That is a completely different relationship being basically constructed in an object than previous. Build a new link, populate that new link, right, with those relationships. Get that data correct. Don't try to refactor. And this is one method that we use. The other thing is what happens when the descriptive data on a source system changes. You do an upgrade. I was a PeopleSoft developer for about 14 years. Anybody know anything about PeopleSoft? Every time you do an upgrade, right, and inside the government, nothing is vanilla because they're special. And so everything has to be done, in a very custom way, right? And so every time we did an upgrade, there was almost like an 18-month ramp up to make sure we captured all the changes that had been made, all of the customizations, and then apply that to the next version, right? And of course, the underlying base tables are changing also. And so what do you do with something like that? Well, Data Vault, we don't say, well, let's refactor the model that's capturing, or satellites that are capturing the history. Build a new satellite to capture any of those changes and load from there. And so what you see when we talk about being able to quickly absorb changes, if there's a change like that, you're not touching anything you've built before. So the refactoring, Mike, is not a preservation of what has been built in a process. It also extends to the model. You absorb the change and then you keep moving forward. And by the way, you haven't touched anything else in the model. One of the, across the landscape of what you're building for the enterprise. Because if you look at a third normal form, it's very deep, right? And so, and there are tremendous dependencies in there. And so if you make a change at any point in the model, you are probably impacting a number of things. There is a cascading effect to that. In Data Vault, that doesn't occur. We are not deep, we are wide. With each concept you build on, you bolt on to it, and it's at most 3 layers deep at most. And so the impacts on change are minimal, which is why, again, I go back to the model is an optimized enabler for the methodology as a whole. And so you're not refactoring your model, you're not refactoring the processes, because the processes you built to load the data up to this point remain the same. If I have to load a new satellite, I build a new process. I don't have to touch anything else. So I won't say there is no reengineering, because that would be like a lie, but there's minimal, right? The idea is that it's minimal impact to the model, to the data, to the processes, to the orchestration, to the downstream outcomes. There's minimal impact when you build this way.
Perfect. Yeah, I agree. And that's the exciting part. So I'm looking forward to seeing that in action.